Martyn Iles is the newly appointed Managing Director of the Australian Christian Lobby and also pioneered the Human Rights Law Alliance, an organisation dedicated to supporting Christians who've been discriminated against and litigated against because of their Christian convictions. Martyn is widely respected for his expertise on religious freedom and has served with great distinction before many parliamentary committees. He's also one of the speakers at the inaugural Church and State Summit in just a few weeks on 23rd and 24th of February. You can get more information on other speakers you won't want to miss and the practical 2-day program from the website churchandstate.com.au. Martyn joins me in just moments from now to discuss his new role as the Managing Director of the Australian Christian Lobby and what we can expect to hear from him at the Church and State Summit.
Warning, you are now entering a diversity zone where different opinions are tolerated. This is not a safe space. This is Pellowe Talk.
G'day Martyn and welcome to Pellowe Talk.
G'day, Dave. It's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks for making the time. Very exciting news in the world of Christian activism. A new managing director for the Australian Christian Lobby. Tell me, is this a dream come true for you?
Well, I got to say, I left school. Well, when I graduated my law degree a number of years ago, I didn't imagine that it would find me here. It was not something that ever occurred to me. It wasn't part of a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, or even a 1-year plan. So
yeah, sure.
It was part of the plan that Lyle had when he called me one day in November. So
it's with tongue firmly planted in cheek that I suggest you might have wanted this, because I can't think of any better way to put a huge target on your back for those haters of truth that are viciously opposed to any kind of Christian values or participation in Australian culture.
Sure, and it's certainly the kind of role you only take up if you believe that it's the right thing to do and that you're called to it. And obviously, I've spent a lot of time contemplating those things. And in light of my decision, and I am excited, but obviously very much cognizant of the demands of the role and the burden that it presents. So it's probably a good place to be, equal parts optimistic and pensive.
What's the most important battle you see facing Christians in Australia who wish to organise and participate in Australian life using the tools of democracy? The definition of the undefinition of marriage is now behind us. What's the next battle we're facing? I mean, there's many fronts
Sure.
Start with what's the biggest one next?
Look, I think the biggest one has to be the question of religious freedom. You know, Dave, my story. I was the director of the Human Rights Law Alliance before I took on this role, which is an initiative of the Australian Christian Lobby. I was chief of staff at ACL before that. But in my role with the Human Rights Law Alliance, the primary thing we did was we took on cases and resourced cases where Christians get in trouble with the law for living out their faith. And it's an extraordinary reality that is going on in Australia very, very regularly now. We've had some involvement in roughly 35 cases over the period of the last 18 months. These are people who are at workplaces like in the public service or school teachers or university academics even some people in private enterprises, including senior people and junior people. And organizations like faith-based schools and people who want to become foster parents and all this kind of thing. And because they are Christians, because they hold to orthodox Christian views, particularly around the issues of sexuality, gender and family and marriage, they are being, there's no other word for it, persecuted because of what they believe. And that's being done to them through the mechanism of the law. So I think that finding some protections for Christians to live out their faith and to speak about their faith is a very, very significant point.
So apologies to the viewers too, we're just having some slight internet lag issues, but as long as my face is coming through, it's me and not you. Say again?
I said, what about my face?
Well, yours is the one that's lagging every now and then. We're not sure if it's us or the recording. So, but small budget studio. It is what it is. Blame Skype, blame Microsoft.
Sure.
Or the NBN. We can go political with it instead of just commercial.
Yep. I mean, Canberra, we're probably on the end.
We actually missed all of that.
Really? I made a joke about the NBN, but that's all right.
Irony is rich if the bandwidth isn't.
We'll start with your church. I think the churches have gone too quiet on pushing back against some of these changes. Safe schools, for instance, is an abomination in terms of church and other teachings, and the church, I would have hoped, would be more active in opposing that program and the sister program, Respectful Relationships. It should be against any form of cultural Marxism in our schools. And also, I fear that the church has been quiet and maybe intimidated by some of the tactics in the debate about gay marriage. So another example of where they could play a bigger role. I mean, it's all hands on deck. We are in a culture war. There's been a march through our institutions to fundamentally change Australian values and attitudes. And we've all got to push back against this. I say this as someone, I'm not a Christian, I'm not a member of the church, but I recognise the values of the church as a civilising force in our society, and I would hope that the church would be more active instead of becoming part of a silent majority. You know, the church is too silent on these things and needs to make a stand.
This Church and State Summit is coming up. What can people expect to hear Martyn Iles talk about on the first session on Saturday morning?
Well, I think that the main thing I'll be talking about is, as the title of the talk says, what you should do when you're persecuted for living out your faith. So I will be giving two answers to that. The first answer will be practical, as in who to talk to, what phone number. But the other answer to that is what is the right thing to do. So it is responding biblically, responding faithfully to the pressures that are out there, the very real pressures in the community against you going out and being a strong witness for Christ or being a strong witness for the truth.
Yep.
So I'll be answering both of those questions to the best of my ability, and also telling you a little bit about how the work of ACL is going to evolve into this religious freedom space, which is exciting. I'm very optimistic about that.
In a nutshell, ACL's become perhaps a little bit pigeonholed for being a single issue, mostly because the political landscape was dominated by a single issue. What else does the Australian Christian lobby actually represent to the government on things that perhaps it's not so well known for?
Well, sure. I'll just say on the single issue thing, I mean, that was just because it was the presenting issue of the time. And
that's right.
ACL guys that were willing to stick their head over the trenches and get shot in the head 100 times. So that was the reality of the scenario that we were in. Look, there are real issues that are very, 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 very significant to the church going forward. The first is religious freedom, as I've just said. I mean, we're told in 1 Timothy 2 that as we relate to the government, we're supposed to pray for the ability to live peaceful and quiet lives in all holiness. We're supposed to pray that we have religious freedom, and we're supposed to pray that the gospel will advance. It says in the next verse that God would have all people to come to a knowledge of the truth. So Paul and Timothy could pray. We can pray and act, and we need to pray and act because we live in a democracy. It's really important that these religious freedom issues get prosecuted. We need to have some laws that allow individuals and organisations to maintain their faith and the integrity around their faith. And we will be pushing very hard to get laws of that type. The other thing that really concerns me at the moment is radical gender theory, particularly the way that's found its way into our schools and education system like a cancer, and is confusing our children and in many cases potentially destroying their lives. We must, as Christians, turn the light on, shine it into that dark place, and ensure that our children and the children of our fellow Australians are not being ruined and are not being exploited around all that stuff, because it's very serious. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I read a case the other day that talked of a 15-year-old girl who underwent a double mastectomy because she thinks she's a boy. 15, and because she thinks she's a boy, her body is permanently mutilated. This stuff's pretty serious. We've got to get freedom, laws that allow parents the freedom to choose whether or not their kids undergo that kind of teaching. And we also need to start lobbying against it altogether. And that means that we need to make sure that hate speech laws allow us to do that.
Yeah, very good. The lack of freedom to offend somebody is an atrocious violation of the ability to even think critically. To not be able to confirm you're right is an injustice against those people who are right, and to not be able to correct those people who are wrong is an injustice against everybody.
Well, I think most of us know the saying, the truth hurts, or the truth only hurts when it's supposed to. So, sometimes we're offended in life. I call that character building, because you wake up some mornings and you realize that you're not right. You realize that you might be wrong. Well, hey, some people call that offence, and some people want the law to protect them from that. Well, if we want to be infants for the rest of our lives and never mature and grow in character, well, fine, let's go down that path. Yep. But it's really important that concepts which are hard but true can be spoken and taught and aired in our society. So hate speech laws are a terrible idea.
Now, your Twitter timeline hasn't seen much attention for the last few years. You're not your typical Gen Y-er, but your predecessor was certainly made a big target for himself and freely welcomed the slings and arrows. Where can people abuse you online? I mean, contact you.
Yeah, well, I'm sure I'll get plenty of both. It's been interesting over the last few days of this announcement. I've had so much positive contact. I must have had several hundred people text or email or call me. So I'm very grateful for that. In terms of where you can find me, look, go to the ACL Facebook page. But it's true, I will have a Facebook page for ACL myself, and I will have a Twitter, and I will have an Instagram, and I don't know, whatever else is out there. I don't think I'm going to go in the realm of Snapchat just yet. I think I know I'm a millennial, but I think Gen Z is more Snapchatty. But we'll see how we go. But just watch this space. Follow the ACL Facebook page and the Twitter, and you'll get those updates. That's
brilliant. Look, Martyn, really, really fantastic to get 5 minutes from you. Thank you. We've stretched it into 10, and I hope you keep up the good work, and I'm sure you'll take it a lot further standing on the shoulders of those who came before. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Always great to chat to you, mate.
That's Martyn Iles from the Australian Christian Lobby, the new managing director, and he will be at the Church and State Summit 2018, which is just a few weeks away. So make sure you jump onto the website and get more information about the program, the other speakers, including former Deputy Prime Minister John Anderson, and grab your tickets before they run out. Early bird rates are nearly over. That website is churchandstate.com.au, and if you've never heard of the Australian Christian Lobby before, welcome to political life in Australia. They are the peak Christian lobbyists, activists for the traditional values that Australia was built on, the Australian Christian Lobby, and their website is acl.org.au, and comments and discussion are always welcome. And that's Pellowe Talk for this episode.